The rain hammered the hood of the silver Rolls-Royce Phantom as it hissed to a steaming stop on the side of a rural Alabama highway. Benedict Langston Ashford, CEO of Ashford Technologies, flung open the door, stepped into the wet gravel, and stared at the rising steam with the look of a man who didn't tolerate failure, even from machines worth more than some people's homes. He muttered under his breath, "Damn piece of engineering junk." His phone had just one bar. No signal. No driver. No backup plan. Just thunderclouds and a ruined $1 million morning. He kicked a pebble with his polished Italian shoe, scowled at the engine, then popped the hood with a violent tug. 10 minutes later, headlights approached through the fog. A clunky, rust-bitten tow truck rumbled to a stop behind the Phantom. Benedict squinted as the driver's side door opened and a figure jumped out. It wasn't what he expected. A small black girl, couldn't have been older than 12, walked through the rain with slow, confident steps. Her jacket was too big, soaked through, and her boots splashed straight through the mud. Grease smeared the side of her cheek. Her hands were stained with oil. Her eyes, sharp, calm, controlled. Benedict blinked. "You lost, sweetheart?" The girl ignored the sarcasm. She walked right up to the engine, her eyes scanning it like it was a crossword puzzle she'd already solved. Then she finally spoke. "You mind if I take a look?" He scoffed. "Unless you're hiding a team of German engineers in your back pocket, I'd prefer not." She didn't flinch, just pulled a rubber band from her wrist, tied her curly hair back, and leaned over the engine like it was hers. "It's not German. Rolls-Royce is British. And this model runs a BMW-based V12 modified for smoother injection. Not that it matters. Your high-pressure pump just died." He stared. "Excuse me?" She wiped her hands on her already ruined jeans. "It's not getting fuel. I can fix it enough to get you moving, but you'll need a new pump once you hit town." "You're what, 12? Almost 13. He laughed. "This is a $400,000 vehicle." "And it's not moving," she said flatly. "Do you want me to fix it? Or should we wait for your specialist to drive down from whatever five-star hotel you pulled him out of?" Benedict was speechless. She was small, soaked, and covered in grime, but she spoke like she owned the damn highway. And the confidence in her eyes? Unshakable. He waved his hand. "Go ahead. Not like I've got options." She pulled open the toolbox from the back of the tow truck. He watched as she worked. Fast, efficient, no hesitation, no wasted movement. Her fingers danced across hoses and clamps. She bypassed something with a line she cut and reattached with tape and metal wire. It wasn't standard, but it was clever. In 10 minutes, she stepped back. "Turn the key." He climbed in, half hoping it wouldn't work just so he could laugh her off. But the second he turned the ignition, the engine purred. Smooth. No knock. No warning light. He stepped out slowly, rain still coming down. The engine stayed alive like nothing had ever happened. He looked at her again. Really looked this time. That's when he saw them. 2 thin silver chains hung from her neck. Dog tags. One with a Marine Corps emblem. The other with a name he hadn't heard in nearly a decade. His voice caught. "Where did you get those?" She looked up, confused by the sudden shift in his tone. "They were my dad's." He stepped back. His face went pale. "What was his name?" he asked, voice almost shaking. "Sergeant Elijah Carter, 1st Battalion, Marines, died in Kandahar." Benedict staggered slightly, gripping the door for balance. The storm wasn't outside anymore. It was inside him now, because Sergeant Carter hadn't just served near him. He had saved his life, and Benedict had never said a word about what happened after. And now, standing in the rain, face to face with the man's daughter, the truth he buried for years was staring back at him, covered in grease and holding a wrench. It was never supposed to be this way. Imani Carter had been fixing engines since she was 8, not because someone handed her tools and said, "Go learn," but because life didn't give her a choice. Her father, Sergeant Elijah Carter, was a proud Marine. He'd taught her how to respect machines before she even understood multiplication. And when he didn't come back from Afghanistan, the garage became her anchor, and tools became the language she used to survive the silence. The shop was nothing special. 2 bays, rust on the signage, and a bell above the door that clanged instead of chimed. But it was home. Her grandma, Ms. Ruth, ran the front desk, barely 5 feet tall, but nobody in the entire county talked back to her twice. She kept the books tight, and the rules tighter. "You're not working with open fuel lines unless I can see your elbows," she'd shout, pointing from the office window. Imani would grin, roll up her sleeves higher, and get back to work. It wasn't just about fixing cars. It was about fixing lives. People came in broke, beaten down, disrespected by cops, bosses, or bills they couldn't pay. And they left with their car humming and their pride still intact. Imani never charged more than she needed to. And if a single mother said she couldn't afford it, Imani just waved her off with, "Then I guess it's on the house." Stonewood, Alabama, wasn't known for kindness, especially not to black folks, especially not to girls who looked like Imani and knew more about engines than half the grown men on the block. The stares came with the job. So did the dismissive laughs. One time, a man in a lifted truck walked in, spotted Imani under the hood, and said, "Don't you got school or a doll to play with?" She didn't flinch, just passed him a repair invoice and said, "Your transmission's been slipping for 6 weeks. You'll make it home, but not through the weekend. Want me to fix it? Or want AA to tow you back on Monday?" He blinked, then said, "Go ahead." That was how respect came. Slow, reluctant, and never offered twice. Every evening she'd sit on the porch beside her grandmother, the sunset hitting the rusted fender of her father's old Chevy pickup parked in the driveway. She refused to fix that truck, not because she couldn't, but because every scratch on that hood, every dent in that bumper, was a story, a memory, a reminder. That truck had dropped her off at school. That truck had waited in the hospital parking lot when her mother died. That truck had carried her father's uniform home in a folded box. Sometimes she'd hold his dog tags in her hand and just listen. Not to the world, but to the stillness. Her father always said machines talked if you knew how to listen. She applied that lesson to people, too. The way customers sighed when they opened the door, the way their hands trembled on the counter when they asked if she could do it cheaper, the way white drivers blinked when they saw a black girl in overalls and a torque wrench. She never raised her voice, never begged for respect. She just earned it, one fix at a time. Still, sometimes she wondered if it mattered, if being this good at something would ever protect her from the world. Because in Alabama, even perfection came with a price if you were black. But Ms. Ruth would remind her, "You carry your daddy's name, child. You don't just fix cars, you fix how they see us. That's power. That's legacy." So when the call came in over the radio that morning, a silver luxury vehicle stranded on Route 9, Imani didn't think twice. She just wiped her hands, grabbed her bag, and rode out with the same quiet confidence her father used to carry in combat boots. She had no idea who was waiting on that highway. But the man who once owed her family everything was about to learn that some debts don't stay buried forever. Benedict stood in the rain, silent, staring at the dog tags like they were ghosts pulled straight from his past. Imani didn't say a word. She was used to that look. The shift from arrogance to confusion. It wasn't the first time someone underestimated her, but it might have been the first time someone recognized what they lost because of it. "You said, Carter?" he asked, almost whispering. She nodded. "Sergeant Elijah Carter, 1st Battalion. My dad." Benedict's mouth moved, but no sound came. He gripped the door frame harder than he realized, knuckles white under the drizzle. Imani kept her eyes locked on him. Her father always said, "People show their truth in the silence." Right now, Benedict's silence said everything. He cleared his throat, suddenly remembering himself. He saved my unit. Kandahar. You were there? He nodded slowly, lips pressed tight. He dragged 3 of us out after the IED hit. Should have gotten the Silver Star, but... But? Benedict didn't finish. His eyes darted to the engine. I didn't know he had a daughter. You didn't ask, Imani said. She walked past him toward the truck. The conversation was done for her. She'd done what she came to do, fixed the car, handed back the key, and maybe, just maybe, cracked a crack in a man's shell. But as she climbed back into the tow truck, Benedict called after her. Wait. She turned. I want to pay you. She raised an eyebrow. I already told you. You're good. No, he said quickly. I mean really pay. What you did. It wasn't just a fix. You solved something my own people couldn't. That's worth more. Imani glanced at the bills he was pulling from his wallet. 100 after 100. He offered them with a shaky hand. She looked at the money, then at him. You think respect is a tip? He stopped cold. You had it in you to say my father deserved more. But you never did. And now you're here trying to throw cash on something you buried 10 years ago? The wind picked up. The rain hadn't stopped, but neither of them seemed to notice any more. I didn't know what to do, he said. Back then, I was a nobody, just a kid from Boston trying to survive the army. When the inquiry came up about that mission, they asked if I saw who gave the order. I said no. But you did, she said. He looked away. Why'd you lie? Benedict hesitated, then met her eyes. Because they were looking for someone to blame. Your father's call saved lives, but they said it broke protocol. If I said it was him, they'd pin the deaths on him too. So instead, they dishonorably discharged him, Imani said, stripped his pension, labeled him a risk. I thought staying silent would protect him, Benedict said quietly. But I didn't realize silence can cut deeper than betrayal. Imani didn't blink. He died 6 months later. No medals, no ceremony, just a folded flag, and a funeral no one came to. The weight of it hung between them like fog. She climbed into the truck again. You want to pay me? She asked, slamming the door. Say his name next time someone praises you for your success. The engine coughed, then roared to life. As she pulled away, Benedict stood on the shoulder, the rain soaking through his $1,000 suit, still gripping the bills he hadn't handed over. His car was fixed, his schedule back on track. But inside him, something had snapped loose. Later that night, he would cancel a meeting. Then, 2. then a call to his legal team asking for past military service reviews. But in that moment, all he could do was watch the red taillights disappear into the storm and realize he'd just met the ghost of a man he failed and the fire of the daughter he left behind. Benedict couldn't sleep that night. He'd made it to his meeting in Montgomery. The investors were impressed. The pitch landed. The contract signed. But none of it felt right. Every time he glanced at his reflection, in the car window, in the boardroom glass, in the mirror above his hotel sink, he saw her. That girl. That fire in her voice. That chain around her neck. He saw Sergeant Carter, and he saw himself, standing back when it mattered most. The next morning, he did something he hadn't done in years. He opened his old army box, the one he kept buried in a closet behind golf trophies and forgotten commendations. Inside were letters, worn photographs, and a single folded document marked "Case Closed, Not Under Review." He ran his finger over Elijah Carter's name. That afternoon, his legal director called. "Sir, is something wrong?" Benedict didn't answer right away. Instead, he stared at his laptop, the company's public homepage open. "I want you to review something," he said. "Find out who handled the Carter discharge and what kind of legal channels were used to close it." There was a pause. "Sir, that file's a decade old. It wasn't even handled internally. It was Army JAG. "I don't care," Benedict snapped. "I want everything. Reports, witness names, especially anything with my signature on it." "Okay. Understood." But that wasn't what unraveled things. It was something else. It started with a photo. A blurry cell phone image taken by a local gas station customer who'd seen Imani under the hood of Benedict's Rolls-Royce. She'd posted it with the caption, "Little black girl fixes rich guy's car while he stands useless. This kid is legit a genius." Within hours, it spread. People in Stonewood started asking questions. Who's this girl? Why's she working under a car at that age? Isn't that illegal? Benedict's company, Ashford Technologies, had an entire PR team trained to jump on that kind of viral content. Their job was to get ahead of headlines, even before they became headlines. But instead of protecting the girl, they tried to protect the company. And that's when everything began to rot. 3 days later, Ms. Ruth Carter walked into the garage holding a letter. Her hand was shaking. "What's that?" Imani asked, sliding out from under a Ford bumper. Ms. Ruth handed it over. "Zoning inspection. Said we violated some kind of safety regulation. Gave us 7 days to respond or pay a fine." "Since when?" Imani asked. Ms. Ruth didn't answer. Her eyes said enough. That same afternoon, the parts supplier they'd used for 5 years stopped answering calls. Their next oil delivery was canceled. One of their oldest clients, the pastor from Hillview Church, quietly rescheduled his next service appointment elsewhere. Imani didn't need to guess. She knew what was happening. And she knew who was behind it. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just walked inside the garage office, sat down, and stared at her father's dog tags. Then she reached for the drawer, pulled out her notebook, the one she kept for personal projects, and flipped it open to a blank page. Across the top, she wrote one word: retaliation. Benedict, meanwhile, was trying to pretend he didn't know. He hadn't told PR to do anything, but he also hadn't stopped them. And in the corporate world, silence was always interpreted as permission. His chief risk officer walked in the next morning with a tight smile. "Small situation, sir. That girl from the car thing, turns out she's 12. couple outlets are asking why she was working on an adult vehicle. Benedict froze. Is that a problem? Could be. We made a few calls, just standard procedure. Sent some info to child safety groups and, well, might have prompted a CPS inquiry. Benedict stood up. You filed a report on her? Technically anonymous, nothing traceable. Look, we're protecting the brand. Last thing we need is some activist blog turning this into a story about us exploiting child labor. She wasn't labor, Benedict said through clenched teeth. She was helping me. Doesn't matter. It's about optics. You were on the side of the road. Rich guy in a suit. Little girl under your hood? The internet eats that up. Benedict didn't speak. He just sat down. And for the first time in his career, he wasn't sure if protecting the company was the same as doing the right thing. Outside, the rain had cleared. But inside that garage back in Stonewood, another storm was forming. And this time, it wouldn't pass quietly. The knock came early. Ms. Ruth opened the door in her robe, her hand still trembling from her second cup of coffee. A white woman with tight lips and a clipboard stood in the doorway, flanked by a younger man in a blue windbreaker that said, Child Welfare Division. Good morning, ma'am. We're here to follow up on a report regarding the welfare of a minor. I believe her name is Imani Carter. Ms. Ruth froze. Behind her, Imani was already at the kitchen table finishing up her homework. She didn't even look up. She'd been expecting this. They always came when black families started shining too brightly. Can we come in? The woman asked. Ms. Ruth stepped aside, shoulders stiff, voice sharp. Y'all got a warrant? The agent hesitated, then softened. No, ma'am. But if you refuse, we'll file for one, and it'll reflect in the case report. Imani stood up, calm as ever. It's fine, Nana. Let them look. The woman's eyes scanned the small apartment above the garage. Spotless floors, textbooks stacked, neatly folded laundry on the couch. You live here full-time? She asked. Yup, Imani replied. Since I was 7. Ever since my dad's last deployment. The clipboard rustled. And how often do you work in the garage downstairs? I don't work, Imani said. I help. I learn. I fix what needs fixing. The man scribbled something. And are you compensated? Imani blinked. I don't need to be. That garage is part of who I am. But they weren't really listening. They weren't here to understand. They were here to box it all into safe or unsafe, legal or not. The woman moved toward the back window, where Imani's father's old military jacket hung on a hook. Below it sat a framed photo. Elijah Carter in uniform, smile wide, arms wrapped around a baby Imani. The woman's eyes paused there. Your father was military? Marine Corps, Imani said. Fought for a country that didn't fight back for him. The woman didn't respond. She turned and said, We'll need to schedule an official interview. Alone. Ms. Ruth stepped forward. She's 12. She doesn't need to speak to nobody alone. Actually, she does. It's procedure. Imani placed a hand on her grandma's arm. It's okay. The next day, the garage was quiet. Imani sat across from the CPS agent inside the shop, a stack of tools beside her, oil on her sleeves. The woman tapped her pen. You understand we're just trying to make sure you're safe. Imani nodded slowly. You ever ask that about white boys who cut timber with their dads in the woods? Or change tires at their uncles' shops? The agent paused. It's not about race. Imani smiled. Not sarcastic, just tired. It always is. You just don't say it out loud. That afternoon, Ms. Ruth got another letter. The city had flagged the shop for environmental violations, something about an unapproved storage drum and improper disposal procedures. They hadn't changed a thing in 10 years. But now, the fines were rolling in like clockwork. Then their bank called. Their small business loan, up for annual review, was suddenly in reassessment. Payments were due early. Interest was going up. Ms. Ruth hung up and stared at the receiver like it had lied to her. "They're coming for us," she said. Imani stood still. "They're not just coming. They're already here." But she wasn't scared. Not this time. She walked outside to the garage, grabbed her father's jacket from the hook, and slipped it on. The sleeves were too long, but it fit where it mattered. She turned to the wall where her dad's medals were framed. One was cracked from when a storm had blown open the window last year. She never fixed the glass. Now she didn't want to, because the crack looked like what they'd done to him. Silenced his name, buried his truth. And now they wanted to do the same to her. Across town, Benedict sat in his penthouse office, watching his screen fill with headlines. Black child mechanic investigated after fixing CEO's car. Child labor? Or retaliation against military family? His PR director buzzed in. "Sir, we're getting heat from both sides. Some folks are calling you racist. Others say it's fake outrage. Do we respond?" He didn't answer. He stared at the article. A grainy image of Imani in coveralls, standing next to his Phantom. The caption beneath it read, "She fixed the car. Then they tried to break her." Benedict reached into his drawer and pulled out Carter's old case file. And this time, he read every word. The boardroom was cold. Glass walls, chrome chairs, and a dozen people in tailored suits sitting like statues around a polished oak table. Benedict stood at the head, arms crossed, face unreadable. Rhonda Bailey, legal chief of Ashford Industries, stood clicking through slides. "This final section covers our standard brand protection actions," she said. "We neutralized the Carter optics. CPS responded swiftly. As for the zoning campaign—" "What?" Benedict cut in. Rhonda hesitated. "Zoning enforcement, local inspections. It's a strategic push, quiet, controlled, standard practice for reputation control." "And you filed that?" he asked. "Legal authorized it. No internal policy was broken." Garrett Powell, head of security, shifted in his seat. His jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Benedict looked around the room. "Anyone want to explain how threatening a black child and her grandmother aligns with our values?" Silence. Rhonda kept her voice flat. "She created legal exposure. We acted before it snowballed." "You tried to bury her," Benedict said, "like we buried her father." The words fell heavy. Garrett flinched. Everyone else froze. "I read the report," Benedict said. 10 years ago, Sergeant Elijah Carter saved lives. He got discharged for doing the right thing while the rest of us stayed silent." His voice didn't rise, but every syllable cut. "I let it happen. I didn't speak up then. I'm not staying silent now." Rhonda folded her arms. "We acted in the company's best interest." "No, you acted in cowardice." The room fell quiet again until the door opened, and in walked Imani. She wore her father's jacket. Behind her stood Monica Ashford, Benedict's daughter, and a sharp-eyed man in military blues. Cameras clicked. Reporters peeked in through the glass wall. "What the hell is this?" Rhonda barked. Benedict raised his hand. "That's enough." He stepped aside, letting Imani walk forward. I think the board should hear what she has to say. Imani didn't hesitate. She pulled out a small recorder, placed it on the table, and hit play. The voice that echoed through the room was Elijah Carter's. A letter. A message. Recorded weeks before his final mission. If anything happens to me, tell my daughter I served proud, but I don't regret breaking protocol to save lives. If they court-martial me for that, let them. I didn't join the Corps to follow silence. I joined to protect the people beside me, no matter their name, rank, or color. The room went still. The man in uniform stepped forward. Captain Briggs, Department of Veterans Affairs. I've reviewed the Carter file. Sergeant Carter's discharge was politically motivated and racially tainted. Based on this and other statements, I'm reopening the case. Rhonda turned to Benedict. You coordinated this? No, Benedict said. She did. He looked at Imani. She didn't just fix my car. She fixed what we broke. Rhonda moved toward the door. You're making a mistake. No, Benedict replied. You did. You filed a false CPS report. You pushed city inspectors into a local family business to crush a 12-year-old girl. You're fired. Effective immediately. Security stepped toward her. Rhonda froze, then walked out stiffly without another word. Garrett leaned forward. Sir, if I may. Benedict nodded. I should have come to you earlier, Garrett said. I heard what they planned. I didn't stop it. I won't make that mistake again. Benedict gave a slow nod. Make it right, Powell. Imani reached into her bag, pulled out a copy of the old discharge papers, and laid them on the table. These don't define him anymore, she said, but I want them gone. Officially, publicly. Captain Briggs nodded. Consider it done. Benedict turned to Imani, voice quiet. Anything else I can do? She looked at him. No smile, just truth. You can stop pretending silence is neutral. She turned and walked out, the medals on her father's jacket catching the light as the cameras flashed. Outside, a crowd had gathered. Veterans, journalists, local families from Stonewood. Some held up signs, Honor Sergeant Carter. We fix engines. We fix justice. Benedict stepped to the podium. I failed a soldier once. I won't fail his daughter. He looked down, then back at the cameras. She reminded me that fixing a company starts by fixing your conscience. And that's where we begin. The garage lights buzzed as dusk settled over Stonewood. Ms. Ruth poured 2 mugs of tea, her hands finally steady after weeks of chaos. She looked over at Imani, who sat cross-legged on the floor, flipping through her father's old maintenance logs. He used to scribble notes on everything, Imani said with a soft grin, even tire pressure adjustments. Ms. Ruth chuckled. That man wrote like it was gospel. They sipped in silence, the weight of the past few weeks slowly lifting. News vans had parked outside the shop every day since the hearing. But now, they were gone. The headlines had moved on. But something deeper had changed. Imani had changed it. A week ago, the Department of Veterans Affairs held a public press conference. They announced the full exoneration of Sergeant Elijah Carter, with honors reinstated posthumously. It made every national outlet. Photos of Imani holding her father's medals filled timelines across the country. In one picture, she stood between 2 Marines, chin up, jacket zipped high. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. The silence said it all. But the part that caught everyone off guard was what happened after. A letter arrived in the mail. handwritten, thick envelope, sealed with gold trim. Imani opened it slowly. Ms. Carter, Ashford Technologies has decided to partner with the Elijah Carter Foundation for Youth Engineering. In your name. Full funding. No strings. We owe more than we can ever repay. B.A. Ms. Ruth's eyes watered. They naming something after him? Not just something, Imani whispered. A whole damn program. Weeks later, Benedict stood outside the same garage, wearing jeans instead of a suit, sleeves rolled, looking smaller than he ever had in the boardroom. He handed Imani a wrench. "Your dad taught me how to hold one of these," he said. "Only felt right. I learned from his daughter, too." Imani smiled faintly. "We charge corporate rates." He laughed. The press stayed away that day. It wasn't for the cameras. It was for the ones who were gone, for the ones who fought, and for the ones still learning how to fix what's broken. At school, things shifted too. Imani's classmates started looking at her differently, not because she was on TV, but because they realized what she carried. They'd whispered before, about her working in a garage, about the grease on her hands, about how she dressed. Now they listened. Even the principal, who once sent a note home about appearance standards, pulled her aside in the hallway. "You made this town proud," he said, "and you made us look hard at ourselves." Imani didn't say much. She just nodded, walked past him, and kept going. One morning, a group of kids showed up at the shop after school. They came with broken bikes, busted scooters, and a whole lot of questions. "Is it true you fixed a Rolls-Royce? Can we learn too?" Ms. Ruth looked overwhelmed, but Imani just pulled out a box of spare tools. "We don't just fix things here," she said. "We build." Word spread. Fast. 2 months later, the Carter Garage wasn't just a local shop anymore. It was a community hub. A new sign hung outside, carved wood, bold letters. The Elijah Carter Youth Engineering Center, established by his daughter. Inside, shelves were stocked with tools donated by Ashford. Solar panels lined the roof. Local veterans volunteered twice a week. And Imani? She taught. Not because she had to, but because nobody ever told her she couldn't. One evening, after the last kid left, she stood out front, staring at the stars above Stonewood. Benedict pulled up quietly beside her, his new electric SUV humming low. "You ever think about doing more with all this?" he asked. "College, maybe a scholarship. I can help." Imani looked up at the sky. "Maybe one day." He smiled. "You've got time." She turned to him. "No," she said. "I had to grow up fast. Time wasn't something this country gave to kids like me." He didn't argue. He just nodded, then handed her a final envelope. "This one's not from me. It's from the Pentagon." Inside was a folded flag, and beneath it, a certificate. "Awarded in honor of service and sacrifice, Sergeant Elijah Carter." Signed by the Secretary of Defense. Imani held it tight, her fingers gripping the frame like it was the last piece of him she hadn't already earned back. She didn't cry, but Ms. Ruth did. The next day, they hung the flag on the wall, beside the cracked frame, the dog tags, and a new photo. Imani Carter in coveralls, surrounded by kids. A bright white banner behind her that read, "We fix engines, we fix justice."